Guys, I've talked about NPR many, many times, and I'm going to do an experiment with you right here on this show. So I have not tuned in. I'm going to tune into NPR, and my guess is they're talking about race. I'm in my car. I'm going to tune in right now. Ready? Let's listen.
Don't say, I'm sorry. If they don't express some remorse for the crime for which they have been convicted, the parole board will not let them out. And they won't let them out because they don't trust them to recognize and appreciate the wrongfulness of their conduct. Well, it's the same for a collective community. If we don't acknowledge the horror of slavery and lynching and segregation, it's hard to trust people to be committed to racial equality and fair treatment of everyone. And that's the problem with this legislator's comment. It evokes this kind of absence of shame for what happened. It romanticizes it. He wants to replicate it. And we're not going to be a free country while we believe that we can tolerate that vision of how we relate to one another.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has tallied over 700 monuments to the Confederacy on public lands. This process of taking them down is really just beginning. There's so much resistance. Sometimes it's violent. Where do you think the South goes from here?
All right, guys, that's all I can stomach. I am telling you, I give you my hand to God that was random. And I think I might start, a show a week like that, just to prove to you that the media is absolutely and unequivocally not a partisan matter, insane with race. So bear in mind, just days ago, Manchester was children were slaughtered. This is just off the top of my head of one. We could fill this gap with anything, but Manchester had terrorism in the form of Islamic extremism slaughter their children, and NPR is choosing to talk about the Confederacy and the looming Confederacy and the statues, I suppose, that maybe you got General Lee. In fact, I just saw they did take down General Lee's monument in the South. Some leftist organization craned it down. Ladies and gentlemen, do you understand what I'm saying here? Is this resonating with you? Everything, non-stop, race. It's beyond amusing. It's very, very irresponsible. So their thinking is, if everybody is not talking about race 24 hours a day, what might happen? What could happen? Let me propose that thought to you, my listener. What is the underbelly? What is it that they fear? If we're not talking about race, if we're not just drudging up any kind of morsel of, or flicker, or flake, or remnant of some racial whatever. And by the way, they're plumbing back to the Confederacy, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it requires to fill 24 hours of NPR with race, class, every once in a while, class, gender, race, back to race. There's a couple more homo stories. Race, and let's get into the trans game. Race. It's just ridiculous. This is the left. This is who they are all the time. And the conversation is never framed in a way where we even have any kind of fruitful conversation. It's always framed in a way that we're all racists. Everybody's just a racist that has white skin, I suppose. Everybody's a victim who doesn't. And if we were to stop the conversation, even for a New York minute, we would all double down into the black hole of our racism so deeply, into our inner, id of racism, that the responsibility would just be profound on NPR for not having broadcast race racketeering 24/7 to constantly remind us that there's division between us based on skin color, which the lion's share, if not majority of this country, doesn't even want. Any real race dilemma that we face 2017 is brought about by the left. It's maddening. It's not just politics and it's not just infuriating and annoying. No, think about the generations lost to fear, keeping their head on a swivel, looking for just racist boogeymen everywhere because NPR can't stop broadcasting race nonsense for a second. It's just infuriating and it's ridiculous and it doesn't help anything. I'm sorry, guys. It's a big peccadillo of mine. It really rubs me the wrong way. And, to make matters worse, the more you get to know the left, particularly the power broker left, they yield this, they wield this stuff for power. They make sure people are afraid. They make sure people are divided. They make sure people are stirred up with race concern. From the evil Confederacy will rise again, so that they can cattle shoot and toll booth their votes in such a way as to win elections and push leftist policy, which grows the state and empowers the same people that are barking this poisonous, venomous nonsense. And that's the truth. And it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. You have to wonder, don't you? You have to wonder where the breaking point is. I suppose out of all the frustrations I feel, it's just, how is this nonsense hanging on? You can make a very, very decent case that the last election was tilted towards the GOP because people were utterly sick, not just of this, of the political correctness, of the race, class, gender, of the social engineering, of the speech control nonsense, the Orwellian nonsense that just pours out of the left like vomit from a sick dog. You can make a case, and I think a pretty good one, that the election was heavily influenced by that. Now, granted, if you listen to MSNBC, you're listening. You're thinking Russia. Russia is everywhere. Russia's around every corner, under every stone. But I'm telling you, what's true. The American people are sick to death of it. But my point for bringing this up is, you would think, after losing such an election, that there would maybe be the slightest bit of pressure taken off the race, class, gender 24/7 gas pedal that is the leftist vehicle pouring down the Autobahn of division. No, not at all. If anything, they put a German-engineered engine in that vehicle, and they're going twice as fast. And it begs the questions before you. There's nothing else. There's nothing else they have. How could they not put this together? People are so sick of this. I'm not claiming that because people are sick of it, it ceases to have power, or it ceases to influence things or intimidate people or keep them from talking. You know my bright idea for the future of race relations? Openly discuss things. No limits. Nothing off limits. No conversation, no language, no words. Openly discuss cultural differences, background differences, the way we were raised, the way we think about things, our socioeconomic differences. Openly, transparently talk about it and pursue, in doing so, Martin Luther King's dream. But that in no way represents NPR or the leftist gaggle, the leftist vermin that seek to divide us by race every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, until there's consequences for this is honestly what I think, and I'll conclude with this. Until there is consequences for NPR, for MSNBC, to race racketeer, to exploit with the racism of low expectations, to constantly bring up race where race has nothing to do with anything, until there are consequences. In other words, until they lose sponsorship, until they're driven into oblivion with shame, until there's actual they will not stop doing this. There needs to be a groundswell of rejection, collective rejection of this nonsense from the people. And I'm sure it's coming. But that's the only thing. You can't talk these people off the cliff. You can't reason with them. All they know is race, class, gender. There needs to be a groundswell of cultural shame that befalls these race racketeers, these race profiteers, race hustlers. NPR should be ashamed of itself. And if you want to test my theory, turn on NPR right now. There is a 50-50 chance they are talking about lynching sites in the old Confederacy. Thank you for listening to Brock Lawley. Be a people of fortitude, character, and abounding courage.